The name of this module is Introduction to Sociology of Education. Let's start with the origins of education in the United States. In the case of pre-modern society, schooling existed for the few people who had the time and resources available to pursue scholarly topics such as arts and philosophy. This typically meant that it was upper-class children who had access to formal education, usually by attending private schools and universities. At this time, schooling was considered leisurely or a hobby for some people, while for others it may have been considered the primary way to obtain certain skills. For example, clergy leaders typically obtained formal schooling during this time in order to become prepared to take on leadership positions within their religious organizations. However, for the majority of people, most learning occurred through modeling. During this time, most people learned skills from their family members. For example, some children worked in the household, others on farms, and some worked as wage laborers. They typically learned skills needed for their work from their family members who also engaged in such work. Some people received an education in a specific trade, such as carpentry, by serving as an apprentice. At the time, there were no schools that existed for the mass of the population as they do today. Public schools began to emerge in the early 1830s as a result of the demands of educational reformers who advocated for the development of schools that would be free and accessible to all children and supported by taxpayers. Sociologists have drawn attention to the relationship between industrialization and the development of modern schooling. For example, as the economy became more industrial, the differentiation of jobs increased. This created a demand for specialized schooling. Further, as more and more jobs came to be located away from the home, it became more difficult for skills to be passed down by family members. And with more adults working outside the home, a place for children to spend their time became more necessary. For these reasons, industrialization has played a large role in the development of modern education. Over time, the U.S. has increasingly become a credential society, that is, one in which access to desirable work depends on the completion of formal education, usually demonstrated by a diploma or certificate of some kind. As you may have noticed, educational credentials play a major role in shaping opportunities for social and economic mobility. Now, I have been using the term education already, but what exactly is meant by the term? Sociologists define education as the social institution through which individuals acquire knowledge and skills and learn cultural norms and values. It can manifest in different ways, such as through informal education, which occurs in a spontaneous or unplanned way. Informal education is likely to take place outside a school setting, perhaps occurring somewhere like a museum or community-based organization. On the other hand, formal education refers to a purposeful, planned effort to impart specific skills or information, which typically occurs within academic institutions such as schools. This can also be referred to as schooling, which refers to organized instruction that is formal and systematic, delivered by trained teachers, and usually taking place in classrooms. However, schooling may include extracurricular activities and assignments that students may complete outside the classroom. Through schooling, instructors pass on the values, knowledge, and skills that they or others have defined as important. Sociologists are very interested in studying education for a variety of reasons. To name a few, it is a social institution in which many of us participate, usually as students. In the U.S., young people spend a large part of their childhood in school. Some of us may experience the education system as parents who are concerned with the type of education their child is receiving, how money and time are spent in schools. Many of us encounter the education system as taxpayers, as most public funding for schools comes from tax revenue. And others of us experience the education system as employees. Schools are major employers, employing teachers, support staff, administrators, custodians, maintenance staff, and others. In addition, schooling is often responsible for teaching citizenship and job skills that facilitate political participation and economic growth. Now, let's transition to some of the major theoretical perspectives in sociology of education. Let's start with structural functionalist theory, one of the macro-level theories that focuses on larger societal systems. According to this perspective, interdependent parts make up society, and education is one of these parts, which is necessary for the survival of society. Structural functionalism focuses on how education systems work and what purpose education serves in society. This perspective assumes education operates to facilitate the smooth functioning of society. When utilizing a structural functionalist framework, schools are analyzed in terms of their function or purpose in the larger social structure. Emile Durkheim promoted the use of sociology in understanding education. His work forms the foundation for functionalist theory, and he wrote about the importance of education. He described modern societies as complex, with specialized and interdependent institutions. According to Durkheim, complexity creates a problem for social solidarity, the bonds that unite members of a social group. Social ties have weakened in modern society, as there is lots of cultural, social, and religious heterogeneity. Durkheim offered us the concept of moral education, which refers to the way that education addresses the weakening of social ties by socializing members of society into the norms and values necessary to maintain social solidarity. Durkheim was interested in the nature and function of discipline and argued that the morality of the classroom teaches students the moral order of society. For example, the use of tardy bells in school may promote the importance of punctuality. The use of detention as punishment may teach young people the importance of following rules or demonstrate the way that there are consequences if rules are not followed. Durkheim suggested that schools mirror the social order in the larger society and teach students how to become a functioning member of that larger social order. Contemporary functionalist theories emphasize the way education socializes people into the norms, values, and skills necessary for society to survive and thrive. It proposes that education has both intended and unintended functions. Let's brainstorm a few. For example, schools are largely responsible for the transfer of knowledge, teaching students subjects such as history and science. Another function of schools is job preparation, as they help prepare young people to become future workers who will contribute to the economy and workforce. Some schools offer educational programs that emphasize specific job-related skills, like woodshop, computer technology, or auto mechanics. In addition, schools are an important source of childcare for working parents, as children are in school for most of the workday. Schools promote social integration as they provide children with common cultural references, offer opportunities for building community, and provide a sense of national identity. In the case of community building, imagine the school spirit demonstrated at a school-wide assembly. It is likely that students will wear their school colors, perhaps t-shirts with their school name and or mascot, banners hang, the school band performs a school song, and cheerleaders perform and generate excitement among the crowd. In terms of national identity, students gain a sense of American pride as they recite the Pledge of Allegiance in school and may even consider serving in the military, as they may be approached by military representatives who visit their schools for the purpose of recruitment. Further, schools are also a great setting for change and innovation to occur. As students and teachers come together to study and learn, new ideas, practices, and research will develop, which can facilitate economic, political, and cultural change. Further, schools serve as a powerful agent of socialization, usually the first that children interact with outside the family. As a result, schools pass down the values, beliefs, and attitudes that are important in American society. Schools are expected to help solve social problems by educating children on issues such as multiculturalism, healthy behaviors, sex education, and drug and violence prevention. These socialization messages are sent in a variety of ways. For example, messages can be sent through teacher-student interactions. An example would be a teacher asking students to raise their hand and wait to be called upon before speaking. Messages are also transmitted through everyday classroom routines, such as lining up to go to lunch or having specific blocks of time scheduled for certain activities, like working on math puzzles, reading stories, or taking naps. Socialization messages can also be sent as students participate in school-wide activities. An example of this is the public recognition of students for positive contributions, like at awards assemblies when students are recognized with citizenship awards or for having perfect attendance. Such recognition could also be demonstrated through visual displays, such as when the Student of the Month's picture is posted on the classroom bulletin board. Socialization messages are also transmitted via subject matter in the formal curriculum. For example, a sense of patriotism may be passed on as students consume glamorized portrayals of U.S. history, or as they are assigned textbooks with imagery that promotes national identity, such as Liberty Bells and American flags on the cover. These are just a few examples of how structural functionalists approach the sociological study of education. A major criticism of functionalist theory is that it ignores the role of schools in reproducing social inequality. Let's transition to another macro-level theory, conflict theory. Conflict theorists also recognize how education socializes students to the dominant norms and values of society. However, conflict theorists assume that there is tension between the haves and the have-nots, and assume that the haves have access to the best education. So conflict theorists argue that schooling privileges some students and disadvantages others. Further, they see education as a tool for capitalist society. Conflict theorists argue that education reproduces social inequality, such that poor children have fewer opportunities to demonstrate their abilities because they lack equal access to educational opportunities. This is sometimes referred to as social reproduction theory. Social reproduction theory asserts that structural characteristics of schools prepare children to function from the same societal level from which they came. Schools train the children of the wealthy to be prepared to take positions at the top of the class structure, and train the children of the poor to accept their positions at the bottom of the class structure. Social reproduction theorists Samuel Bowles and Herbert Gintis wrote the book Schooling in Capitalist America, Educational Reform and the Contradictions of Economic Life in 1976, and it has since been considered groundbreaking work in the area of sociology of education. In their book, Bowles and Gintis use statistics to demonstrate how parental economic status is passed on to children through unequal educational opportunity, and that the modern education system reflects capitalist interests by doing so. Contemporary conflict theory argues that schools reinforce the social stratification system. For example, conflict theorists might study how schools sort students and place them into specialized programs, such as honors and advanced placement. Conflict theorists would argue that sorting and placement is not based solely on merit and helps reproduce inequalities. A major critique of conflict theory is that it does not account for the way that some people are able to achieve social mobility via education. Now turning to a micro-level theory, let's look at symbolic interaction theory. Symbolic interactionists are primarily concerned with how symbols are used to frame interactions. It has its roots in the study of how the self develops through social interaction. Therefore, symbolic interactionist theory might focus on the meanings that are conveyed in the way the school day and activities are organized. Symbolic interactionists might study what occurs in a classroom, drawing attention to how teachers affect their students. One type of symbolic interactionist theory is labeling theory. Labeling theory is interested in the way that the use of labels can become self-fulfilling prophecies for students. If a student is told often enough that he is stupid and can't do the work, the label stupid can become a self-fulfilling prophecy as he comes to incorporate the label into his sense of self. On the other hand, if a student is told enough that she is brilliant and constantly praised in front of others, she may begin to envision herself as brilliant and perform accordingly. In these examples, teachers and others may respond to the student as if that label is an accurate reflection of his or her abilities. Labeling theory helps us understand how teachers' expectations affect students' self-perceptions and achievement levels, and allows us to see how micro-level interactions contribute to individuals' sense of self. A criticism of labeling theory is that its focus on social interaction is too small-scale and needs to be broadened out. It can't give us a picture of the role of the educational system in society as a whole, or help us analyze larger structural problems that result from education. As you can see, each of these theories provide different approaches and insights to the sociological study of education.